ExamPrep.School. Wyoming Crop Insurance Adjuster Exam, exam code 12WY31. There are 5 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1, which is free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Crop Insurance Fundamentals, General Insurance Terms and Concepts, Multiple Peril Crop Insurance, Wyoming Laws, Rules, and Regulations, Pertinent to Crop Insurance. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. In insurance terminology, what best defines risk exposure? A. Estimated probability of an adverse event. B. Current market value of the insured asset. C. Amount of risk the insurer retains. D. Measure of potential financial loss from hazards. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is D. Risk exposure quantifies the potential financial loss an insured faces from specified hazards, forming the basis for premium calculation. Reason A is not correct. This describes likelihood or frequency of a loss event, not the financial magnitude of potential loss. Reason B is not correct. Asset value reflects worth, not the measure of possible loss arising from risk. Reason C is not correct. Insurer retention pertains to the insurer's own risk retention, not the insured's exposure. Question 2. Which statement correctly differentiates a pure risk from a speculative risk? A. Pure risk is voluntarily undertaken. Speculative risk is involuntary. B. Pure risk involves only loss, whereas speculative risk involves the possibility of loss or gain. C. Pure risk yields only financial gains. Speculative risk yields social benefits. D. Pure risk is insurable only if it offers potential gain. The correct answer is B. Pure risk presents only the chance of loss or no loss and is typically insurable, while speculative risk allows for loss or gain and is generally not insurable. Reason A is not correct. Voluntariness is not the distinguishing feature. Both risk types may be voluntary or involuntary. Reason C is not correct. Pure risk never yields gains, and speculative risk is not defined by social benefits. Reason D is not correct. Insurability depends on loss potential, not on whether there is an opportunity for gain. Question 3. When applying the principle of indemnity in crop insurance claims, compensation is calculated to A. Reimburse for replacement cost of new equipment. B. Restore the insured to pre-loss financial position without a gain. C. Cover full policy limit regardless of loss extent. D. Compensate based on anticipated future profits. The correct answer is B. The principle of indemnity ensures the insured is financially restored to the position before loss, preventing any profit from the claim. Reason A is not correct. Replacement cost for equipment is unrelated to indemnifying crop losses. Reason C is not correct. Indemnity limits compensation to actual loss, not the full policy limit automatically. Reason D is not correct. Indemnity prevents profit, so it does not cover anticipated future earnings. Question 4. After a severe hailstorm, a crop adjuster inspects an irrigation pump damaged under an actual cash value ACV policy. The replacement cost of a new pump is $30,000. Due to age, the pump has 20% depreciation, and the estimated salvage value of the damaged pump is $2,000. Under ACV coverage, how much indemnity should the adjuster pay? A. $22,000. B. $24,000. C. $28,000. D. $30,000. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is $22,000 because actual cash value is calculated as replacement cost minus depreciation. $30,000 minus $6,000 equals $24,000. Then reduced by the salvage value. $24,000 minus $2,000 equals $22,000. Reason B is not correct. This amount only subtracts depreciation and omits the salvage value reduction, overstating indemnity. Reason C is not correct. This amount subtracts only part of the depreciation, 10%, rather than the full 20% before salvage deduction. Reason D is not correct. This is the full replacement cost and fails to account for both depreciation and salvage value. Question 5. On the declarations page of a multiple peril crop insurance policy, which component specifies the per acre dollar guarantee at which losses begin to trigger indemnity payments? A. Projected price. B. Per acre guarantee. C. Indemnity rate. D. Approved yield. The correct answer is B. The declarations page lists a per acre guarantee, which is the dollar amount per acre used to calculate when indemnities are payable for covered losses. Reason A is not correct. Projected price indicates the price election per unit but does not represent the guaranteed per acre dollar amount. Reason C is not correct. Indemnity rate is not a standardized term on the declarations page and does not specify the guarantee. Reason D is not correct. Approved yield reflects the insured's yield history and not the per acre dollar guarantee. Question 6. In a crop insurance policy, what is the primary function of the insuring agreement? A. Detail required reporting procedures. B. Outline exclusions and limitations. C. Specify covered perils and coverage scope. D. Establish policyholder claims submission forms. The correct answer is C. The insuring agreement sets out the insurer's promise to indemnify the insured for losses caused by the specified perils under the stated coverage terms. Reason A is not correct. Reporting procedures are typically detailed under policy conditions, not within the insuring agreement. Reason B is not correct. Exclusions and limitations are found in the exclusion section, separate from the insuring agreement. Reason D is not correct. Claims submission forms and processes are outlined in claims procedures, not in the insuring agreement. Question 7. According to the NCIS Common Policy Conditions for multiple peril crop insurance, cancellation by the insurer requires how many days prior written notice to the insured? A. 10 days. B. 15 days. C. 30 days. D. 60 days. The correct answer is C. Under the NCIS Common Policy Conditions, the insurer must provide at least 30 days prior written notice to the insured when canceling the policy for any reason. Reason A is not correct. A 10-day notice period is insufficient under NCIS rules for insurer-initiated cancellation. Reason B is not correct. A 15-day notice period does not meet the minimum requirement set by the NCIS Common Policy Conditions. Reason D is not correct. A 60-day notice period exceeds the required minimum, but is not mandated by NCIS for cancellations. Question 8. An insured submits both a printed paper binder and an email containing an electronic binder for their newly purchased crop insurance policy. As an adjuster verifying evidence of coverage on the day of loss, which statement best describes the functional difference between paper and electronic binders? A. Electronic binders require notarization before they are valid proof of coverage. B. Paper binders are the only primary evidence that must be physically endorsed at the loss site. C. Both provide provisional coverage pending policy issuance, but paper binders serve as tangible proof when electronic access is unavailable. D. Electronic binders supersede paper binders because they contain more accurate policy conditions. The correct answer is C. Both paper and electronic binders serve as temporary evidence of coverage until the formal policy is issued. The paper binder's tangible form is particularly useful when electronic systems are inaccessible, ensuring proof of coverage on site. Reason A is not correct. Electronic binders do not require notarization to be valid evidence of coverage. Reason B is not correct. Paper binders are not the exclusive primary evidence and do not need on-site endorsement to prove coverage. Reason D is not correct. Electronic binders do not supersede paper binders. Both have equal legal effect pending policy issuance. Question 9. In a negligence action arising from a crop loss, the plaintiff must establish all of the following elements except A. Duty, B. Breach of duty, C. Proximate causation, D. Imputed responsibility. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is imputed responsibility. In negligence law, the required elements are duty, breach of duty, causation, and damages. Imputed responsibility is not one of them. Reason A is not correct. Duty is a core element of negligence, representing the legal obligation owed by the defendant. Reason B is not correct. Breach of duty is a core element, referring to the failure to meet the standard of care. Reason C is not correct. Proximate causation is a core element, linking the breach to the harm suffered. Question 10. Under Wyoming law, which comparative negligence system applies when allocating fault for a crop loss claim? A. Modified comparative negligence with a 50% bar. B. Pure comparative negligence. C. Modified comparative negligence with a 51% bar. D. Contributory negligence. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is modified comparative negligence with a 50% bar. Wyoming law bars recovery if the claimant's fault equals or exceeds 50%, reducing liability accordingly. Reason B is not correct. Pure comparative negligence allows recovery regardless of fault percentage, which Wyoming does not follow. Reason C is not correct. There is no 51% fault threshold in Wyoming. The bar is at 50%. Reason D is not correct. Contributory negligence completely bars recovery for any fault, which is not Wyoming's rule. Question 11. An adjuster handling a pesticide drift claim notes that the applicator used standard safeguards yet drifted into a neighboring field, damaging crops. Under the doctrine of strict liability for abnormally dangerous activities, which element must be established to impose liability for pesticide drift? A. That the pesticide involved is classified as ultra-hazardous under applicable statutes. B. That the likelihood of harm is serious if safety measures fail. C. That the activity cannot eliminate risk through reasonable care, despite safeguards. D. That the applicator had a documented history of prior pesticide violations. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that strict liability for ultra-hazardous activities requires showing the activity's inherent inability to eliminate risk through reasonable care, even when standard precautions are used. Reason A is not correct. Statutory classification is not required if the activity meets the common law ultra-hazardous criteria. Reason B is not correct. Serious harm likelihood alone is insufficient without the inability to eliminate risk by reasonable care. Reason D is not correct. A history of violations is irrelevant to imposing strict liability for an ultra-hazardous activity. Question 12. A farmer sues an insurer for denying a valid indemnity under a crop insurance policy, alleging both breach of contract and tortious bad faith. Which remedy is available under the tort claim, but not under the contractual claim? A. Reimbursement for claim preparation costs incurred by the insured. B. Punitive damages for the insurer's intentional denial of a valid claim. C. Expectation damages covering the insured's actual crop loss. D. Restitution of all premiums paid under the policy. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is that punitive damages for willful misconduct are available under a tort claim for bad faith, whereas contract remedy provisions do not allow punitive damages. Reason A is not correct. Claim preparation cost reimbursement is an incidental damage available under contract remedies. Reason C is not correct. Expectation damages for actual loss are the core contract remedy and not exclusive to tort. Reason D is not correct. Premium restitution can be sought under contract theories as a form of policy rescission. Question 13. Under CAT coverage for federal MPCI, which yield guarantee and price selection percentage combination is applied? A. 55% yield guarantee modding 100% price selection. B. 55% yield guarantee, 55% price selection. C. 50% yield guarantee, 100% price selection. D. 50% yield guarantee, 55% price selection. The correct answer is D. The CAT coverage guarantee is set at 50% of the approved APH yield, and the price selection is 55% of the projected price under federal regulations. Reason A is not correct. 55% yield is not the fixed CAT yield guarantee. CAT coverage uses a 50% yield guarantee. Reason B is not correct. The yield guarantee under CAT is 50%, not 55%, making this option invalid. Reason C is not correct. Under CAT coverage, the price selection is 55%, not 100%, so this pairing is incorrect. Question 14. Under federal MPCI buy-up coverage, yield election percentages must be chosen in increments of what size of the approved APH yield? A. 1%. B. 2.5%. C. 10%. D. 5%. The correct answer is D. Buy-up coverage under MPCI allows producers to select a yield election in 5% increments of the approved APH yield, as specified by policy provisions. Reason A is not correct. 1% increments are too fine and are not permitted under the buy-up election rules. Reason B is not correct. 2.5% increments are not an allowed option for yield elections under buy-up coverage. Reason C is not correct. 10% increments exceed the maximum step size specified by the MPCI buy-up rules. Question 15. A corn producer is comparing multiple peril crop insurance, MPCI premium rates, under a yield-based plan versus an area-based county plan. Which primary factor explains why the premium rate for the yield-based plan differs from the county plan rate for the same coverage level? A. The deviation between the producer's individual APH yield and the county expected yield. B. The historical county loss ratio by cause of loss. C. The projected crop price selection selected for the policy. D. The producer's chosen coverage level percentage. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that yield-based plan rates reflect the producer's individual APH yield relative to county yields, whereas area-based plans use only county averages. Reason B is not correct. County loss ratios inform area pricing, but do not drive the difference between yield-based and county plans directly. Reason C is not correct. Price selections affect liability and premium amount, not the actuarial rate differential between plan types. Reason D is not correct. Coverage level is held constant for comparison and does not explain rate differences between plan types. Question 16. An adjuster is calculating the actual production history, APH, for a soybean policy. The county's long-term yield trend is +2 bushels per year. How should the trend adjustment factor be applied when determining the APH? A. Multiply the average of historical yields by the trend factor. B. Add the trend increment to each annual yield before averaging. C. Apply the trend increment only to individual yields that exceed the county average. D. Subtract the trend increment from the most recent yields to normalize them. The correct answer is B. The correct method is to add the trend increment to each year's historical yield before averaging, ensuring the APH reflects current yield potential. Reason A is not correct. The trend factor is applied to individual yields, not to the averaged result. Reason C is not correct. Trend increments apply uniformly to all years, not selectively above county averages. Reason D is not correct. Subtracting would counteract yield improvements and is the opposite of the required adjustment. Question 17. Which of the following is not one of the NCIS basic provisions applicable to multiple peril crop insurance policies? A. Reinstatement. B. Assignment of indemnity. C. Cancellation. D. Notice of loss. The correct answer is A. The NCIS basic provisions include cancellation, assignment of indemnity, notice of loss, proof of loss, and other standard clauses. Reinstatement is a crop provision, not a basic provision. Reason B is not correct. Assignment of indemnity is included in the basic provisions to allow the transfer of a loss payment to another party. Reason C is not correct. Cancellation is a standard basic provision that allows either party to terminate coverage under specified conditions. Reason D is not correct. Notice of loss is a basic provision requiring timely reporting of a claim. Question 18. Under the CAT endorsement for multiple peril crop insurance, what per crop per county administrative fee must the insured pay? A. $300. B. $200. C. $100. D. $400. The correct answer is A. The CAT endorsement requires an administrative fee of $300 per crop, per county, in lieu of a premium for catastrophic coverage. Reason B is not correct. A $200 fee underestimates the required amount. The correct CAT fee is set at $300. Reason C is not correct. A $100 fee is too low. The established administrative fee under CAT is higher to cover program costs. Reason D is not correct. A $400 fee exceeds the statutory CAT endorsement administrative fee. Question 19. A producer has a barley revenue protection policy with a 75% coverage level. The projected price is $4 per bushel, the harvest price is $4.50 per bushel, and the approved APH yield is 60 bushels per acre. The producer elects the harvest price option. What is the per acre revenue guarantee? A. $180. B. $191.25. C. $202.50. D. $270. The correct answer is C. The revenue guarantee is calculated as APH yield multiplied by harvest price multiplied by coverage level. 60 bushels multiplied by $4.50 multiplied by 0.75 equals $202.50. Reason A is not correct. This uses the projected price instead of the harvest price for the calculation. Reason B is not correct. This applies an average of projected and harvest prices rather than the full harvest price. Reason D is not correct. This ignores the coverage level when calculating the guarantee. Question 20. A grain sorghum producer subject to the coarse grain crop provisions has hail damage that reduces the stand by 30%. The approved APH yield is 80 bushels per acre, and the price selection is $6 per bushel. After replanting, what is the per acre replanting indemnity? A. $24. B. $96. C. $48. D. $60. The correct answer is C. Under coarse grain crop provisions, the replant payment is 8 bushels per acre multiplied by the price selection. 8 bushels multiplied by $6 equals $48. Reason A is not correct. This uses only half of the required bushel rate for replant payment. Reason B is not correct. This applies 20% of the insured yield rather than the fixed per acre bushel rate. Reason D is not correct. This assumes a bushel rate of 10 instead of the specified 8 per acre. Question 21. Pursuant to FCIC regulations for multiple peril crop insurance policies, within what maximum time frame must a policyholder notify the insurer following the initial discovery of crop damage or loss? A. 48 hours. B. 72 hours. C. 5 calendar days. D. 10 calendar days. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is 72 hours. FCIC requires policyholders to notify the insurer within 3 calendar days, 72 hours, of first discovering crop damage or loss to permit timely adjuster inspection. Reason A is not correct. 48 hours is too short. The regulation allows up to 72 hours for notification. Reason C is not correct. 5 days exceeds the 72-hour notification requirement mandated by FCIC. Reason D is not correct. 10 days far exceeds the maximum 3 calendar day notification window. Question 22. Under FCIC guidelines, after receiving a policyholder's notice of loss, within how many days must an adjuster make initial contact with the insured to comply with claim handling standards? A. 7 days. B. 14 days. C. 30 days. D. 60 days. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is 14 days. FCIC mandates that adjusters must initiate contact with the policyholder within 2 weeks of receiving a notice of loss to follow prescribed claim timelines. Reason A is not correct. 7 days is shorter than the 2-week contact period required by FCIC. Reason C is not correct. 30 days exceeds the 14-day contact deadline set by FCIC. Reason D is not correct. 60 days is well beyond the mandated 2-week initial contact timeframe. Question 23. An adjuster inspecting a 25-acre cornfield determines that representative sample strips are required. According to FCIC sample strip guidelines, what is the minimum width each strip must have to properly represent the unit? A. 10 feet. B. 40 feet. C. 50 feet. D. 20 feet. The correct answer is D. The FCIC guidelines require representative sample strips to be at least 20 feet wide to ensure adequate representation across the unit. Strips narrower than 20 feet may not capture field variability. Reason A is not correct. A width of 10 feet is too narrow and does not meet FCIC minimum strip standards. Reason B is not correct. 40 feet exceeds the minimum requirement, but is not the prescribed minimum width. Reason C is not correct. 50 feet exceeds the required width, yet the guidelines specify 20 feet minimum. Question 24. An adjuster performing a standing crop appraisal on a barley field nearing maturity must estimate production on the plant. What methodology should the adjuster use to determine an accurate yield estimate? A. Counting all heads in a 1-yard swath and applying the bushels per head factor. B. Estimating yield by visual assessment of crop height and density. C. Taking destructive samples of 3 plants at 3 representative spots and measuring their weight and moisture content. D. Measuring plant population per square foot and extrapolating yield from average kernel weight tables. The correct answer is C. The standing crop appraisal methodology specifies destructive sampling of 3 plants at multiple representative locations and measuring their weight and moisture to calculate an accurate yield. Reason A is not correct. Counting heads and using a standard factor overlooks moisture adjustments required by the standing crop method. Reason B is not correct. Visual height and density assessments lack the precision needed for official yield calculations. Reason D is not correct. Population counts and kernel weight tables do not account for actual plant moisture and size variations. Question 25. Under the non-standard crop insurance policy for spring-seeded crops, if the insurer elects to cancel coverage, the cancellation notice must be mailed no later than which date to meet the requirement of providing at least 30 days written notice before the termination date of March 15th? A. January 16th. B. February 28th. C. February 13th. D. March 1st. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because 30 days prior to the March 15th termination date falls on February 13th, satisfying the written notice requirement. Reason A is not correct. January 16th is more than 30 days before March 15th and exceeds the minimum notice period. Reason B is not correct. February 28th is less than 30 days before March 15th and would not satisfy the full notice requirement. Reason D is not correct. March 1st is too close to the termination date and does not provide the required 30 days of notice. Question 26. According to the basic provisions of a multiple peril crop insurance policy, if the producer fails to pay the premium by the due date shown on the billing statement, coverage will automatically terminate after how many days following that date? A. 15 days. B. 45 days. C. 30 days. D. 60 days. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because the basic provisions specify that coverage terminates automatically 30 days after the premium due date if payment is not received. Reason A is not correct. 15 days is shorter than the 30-day period required for automatic cancellation. Reason B is not correct. 45 days exceeds the prescribed 30-day time frame for cancellation due to non-payment. Reason D is not correct. 60 days is well beyond the 30-day limit and does not align with the basic provisions. Question 27. A producer sells a portion of his acreage to a newly formed LLC during the policy year. The LLC intends to assume the producer's existing revenue protection policy for that acreage. According to RMA procedures for transfer of coverage to a new entity, what must the LLC do to effect the transfer? A. Submit a written transfer request to the insurer within 20 days of the sale, including LLC formation documents and the updated acreage report. B. File an updated acreage report with the county FSA office within 20 days to effect automatic coverage transfer. C. Notify the insurer by the policy cancellation deadline and provide the deed and LLC membership agreement to amend the original policy. D. Wait until the next sales closing date to purchase a new insurance policy for the acquired acreage, because coverage transfers are not allowed midterm. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the LLC must submit a written transfer request to the insurer within 20 days of the sale, along with LLC formation documents and the updated acreage report, because RMA permits midterm transfer of coverage upon transfer of interest only if these requirements are met within the specified time frame. Reason B is not correct. Filing an acreage report with FSA alone does not transfer the insurance policy. The insurer must receive a written request with documentation. Reason C is not correct. Waiting until the cancellation deadline misses the 20-day window required for transfer of coverage after a change in interest. Reason D is not correct. Midterm transfers are allowed if the proper written request and documentation are submitted. Waiting for a new policy is unnecessary. Question 28. What is the minimum number of consecutive crop years of yield records required to establish an actual production history APH database for a producer under the Multiple Peril Crop Insurance Program? A. 2. B. 4. C. 3. D. 5. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is 4 years because the APH database must include at least 4 consecutive years of production records before yield calculations can be performed. Reason A is not correct. 2 years of records do not meet the statutory minimum for establishing an APH database. Reason C is not correct. 3 years of records fall short of the required baseline for APH calculations. Reason D is not correct. 5 years exceed the minimum requirement, but only 4 are required to establish the database. Question 29. In the APH yield calculation process under multiple peril crop insurance, what percentage of the transitional yield is used to plug a low yield year? A. 40%, B. 50%, C. 70%, D. 60%. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is 60%, because the low yield plug adjusts any year below the plug threshold up to 60% of the transitional yield for APH calculations. Reason A is not correct. Plugging at 40% would undervalue the yield relative to the regulatory standard. Reason B is not correct. A 50% plug does not meet the specified percentage set by the program. Reason C is not correct. A 70% plug exceeds the allowable adjustment percentage. Question 30. A farmer's certified APH yields for the past 4 years are 80, 100, 120, and 100 bushels per acre. The policy includes a 90% yield cup limitation. If the farmer reports a current year yield of 140 bushels per acre, what yield will be entered into the APH after applying the cup limitation? A. 90 bushels per acre. B. 100 bushels per acre. C. 120 bushels per acre. D. 140 bushels per acre. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is based on taking 90% of the 4-year average yield. The average is 80 plus 100 plus 120 plus 100 divided by 4 equals 100, and 90% of 100 is 90 bushels per acre. Reason B is not correct. This uses the simple average rather than the 90% cap. Reason C is not correct. This uses the highest historical yield rather than the capped amount. Reason D is not correct. This is the unadjusted actual yield without applying the cup limitation. Question 31. A producer's certified yields for 2019, 2020, and 2021 are 80, 90, and 100 bushels per acre, respectively. The approved trend factor is 5 bushels per acre per year. Using the trend-adjusted APH methodology, what APH yield will be established for this 3-year history? A. 90 bushels per acre. B. 100 bushels per acre. C. 95 bushels per acre. D. 92.5 bushels per acre. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is calculated by adjusting each yield to the current base, year 2021. 2019 yield 80, plus 2 multiplied by 5 equals 90. 2020 yield 90, plus 1 multiplied by 5 equals 95. 2021 yield equals 100. The average is 90 plus 95 plus 100, divided by 3 equals 95 bushels per acre. Reason A is not correct. This is the lowest adjusted yield rather than the average of all adjusted yields. Reason B is not correct. This is the highest adjusted yield without averaging. Reason D is not correct. This is a mid-range computation not based on the specified adjustments. Question 32. A corn producer under an APH policy misses the production reporting deadline and submits the previous year's production after the final date without an approved extension. Which yield will be used to calculate indemnities for that crop year? A. Transitional yield. B. A pH yield. C. Trend-adjusted yield. D. Producer's documented actual yield. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the insurer uses the transitional yield when a producer fails to meet the production reporting deadline without an approved extension, since APH yields cannot be confirmed. Reason B is not correct. APH yields require timely production reports and cannot be used when the deadline is missed. Reason C is not correct. Trend adjustments apply to historical APH yields, not to missed report situations. Reason D is not correct. Unreported actual yield cannot be used without meeting the reporting requirements. Question 33. For an APH-based yield protection policy, the indemnity payable is calculated using which formula? A. Approved yield multiplied by coverage level minus actual production, multiplied by projected price per unit. B. Approved yield multiplied by coverage level minus actual production, multiplied by price election per unit. C. Approved yield minus actual production, multiplied by price election per unit. D. Approved yield multiplied by coverage level minus actual production, multiplied by harvest price per unit. The correct answer is B. The indemnity equals the deficiency in guaranteed bushels, approved yield multiplied by coverage level minus actual production, multiplied by the elected price per unit as specified in the policy. Reason A is not correct. Uses projected price instead of the elected price specified in the policy, which is incorrect for yield protection. Reason C is not correct. Omits the coverage level calculation in the guaranteed bushels, understating potential indemnity. Reason D is not correct. Incorporates harvest price, which is irrelevant in yield protection indemnity calculations. Question 34. Under a revenue protection policy, what is the cap on the harvest price when determining indemnity? A. There is no cap. The actual harvest price is fully applied if higher than the projected price. B. Limited to 115% of the projected price per unit. C. Equal to 100% of the projected price per unit. D. Capped at the projected price plus 10 cents per unit. The correct answer is A. Revenue protection uses the full harvest price when it exceeds the projected price. There is no upper limit imposed by the policy. Reason B is not correct. Suggests an arbitrary 115% limit that does not exist under revenue protection policies. Reason C is not correct. Incorrectly restricts the harvest price to the projected price, which applies to harvest price exclusion, not standard revenue protection. Reason D is not correct. Adds a fixed cent increment cap, which is not a feature of revenue protection indemnity calculations. Question 35. A corn producer selects a revenue protection policy with harvest price exclusion on projected price changes. During the marketing year, the harvest price for corn rises 15% above the projected price, but the producer had excluded harvest price from coverage. Which characteristic applies to this policy? A. Harvest price is applied if it falls below projected price to calculate indemnities. B. Indemnity calculations use the projected price regardless of any higher harvest price. C. Premium is reduced by eliminating downside price risk while retaining upside potential. D. Coverage shifts price risk at planting to a different price for harvest calculations. The correct answer is B. The revenue protection policy with harvest price exclusion stipulates that any harvest price above the projected price is ignored, so indemnity is always based on the projected price. Reason A is not correct. Harvest price exclusion means that harvest price is never applied, whether above or below projected price. Reason C is not correct. Harvest price exclusion removes upside price potential, not downside risk, so premium reduction is not from eliminating downside risk. Reason D is not correct. Price risk is not shifted between planting and harvest. Harvest price exclusion simply ignores harvest price above the projection. Question 36. A soybean producer opts for a group risk plan with a trigger level set at 85% of the 10-year county average yield. At the end of the season, the county yield is measured at 82% of the average. Based on this outcome, what result applies under this GRP policy? A. No indemnity because county yield exceeded the trigger level. B. An indemnity payment will be triggered because county yield is below the trigger level. C. Indemnity equals the difference between actual and trigger yield multiplied by insured acres. D. Indemnity is calculated using individual farm yield rather than county yield. The correct answer is B. Under a group risk plan, any county yield below the trigger level triggers an indemnity, regardless of individual farm yields or difference calculations. Reason A is not correct. When county yield falls below the trigger, an indemnity is required. It does not exceed the trigger. Reason C is not correct. GRP indemnity calculations do not use individual acres difference. They are based on predefined area level factors. Reason D is not correct. GRP indemnities rely solely on county level yields, not individual farm yields. Question 37. A producer insures wheat under both a group risk plan and a group risk income protection plan for the same county. At harvest, county yield is 70% of the 10-year average, while market price is 20% above the projected price. Which statement correctly contrasts coverage under these two plans? A. Both plans pay equal indemnities solely based on yield shortfalls, regardless of price movements. B. GRP indemnity is determined solely by area yield shortfall, without regard to price changes. C. GRIP indemnity ignores yield performance and focuses only on price movements. D. GRP disperses payments based on individual farm yield data, while GRIP uses county averages. The correct answer is B. Group risk plan indemnities depend only on area yield shortfalls and do not adjust for market price changes, whereas GRIP includes price and revenue calculations. Reason A is not correct. GRIP accounts for revenue shortfalls, so price movements can alter indemnity amounts relative to yield shortfall. Reason C is not correct. GRIP considers both yield and price to calculate revenue shortfalls, not solely price. Reason D is not correct. Both plans are based on county-level yields. Individual farm data is not used for indemnity determination. Question 38. Which of the following characteristics is not required for acreage to be aggregated into a single basic unit under the Multiple Peril Crop Insurance (MPCI) provisions within a county? A. Ownership of the insurable acreage by the insured. B. Production of the same insured crop. C. Consistent interest share held by the insured. D. Classification under the same irrigation practice. The correct answer is D. A basic unit comprises all insurable acreage of the same crop in a county in which the insured has the same interest, regardless of irrigation practice classification. Reason A is not correct. All acreage must be insurable and owned by the insured, making ownership a required characteristic. Reason B is not correct. Basic units include only acreage producing the same insured crop, so crop type is a necessary factor. Reason C is not correct. Units require that the insured's share is consistent across all included acreage, making share consistency mandatory. Question 39. A policyholder insures 200 acres of the same crop in County X under an MPCI policy. 150 acres are irrigated and 50 acres are non-irrigated. All acreage meets share and acreage requirements and is owned by the same entity. The policyholder elects a single enterprise unit. Under RMA rules, is the policyholder eligible for that enterprise unit structure? A. No, enterprise units must be separate for each irrigation practice. B. Yes, an enterprise unit includes all acreage of the insured crop in the county, regardless of irrigation practice. C. No, enterprise units apply only if optional units were elected at policy approval. D. Yes, if a detailed irrigation practice field map is submitted to the crop insurance agent. The correct answer is A. An enterprise unit must be elected separately for each irrigation practice, so irrigated and non-irrigated acreage cannot be combined into one enterprise unit. Reason B is not correct. An enterprise unit cannot combine different irrigation practices. They require separate elections. Reason C is not correct. Both basic and optional units may be converted to enterprise units with no optional unit election required at policy approval. Reason D is not correct. Submitting a map does not override the requirement to separate enterprise units by irrigation practice. Question 40. A producer wishes to change from basic to optional units for a 100-acre cornfield within a section insured under MPCI. To establish optional units, which of the following must be filed with the crop insurance provider by the acreage reporting date? A. A statement of non-irrigated practice for each optional unit. B. A separate production history report for each desired optional unit. C. A written description of the boundaries and a map delineating optional unit sections. D. A revised policy with updated share percentages for each optional unit. The correct answer is C. To establish optional units, the producer must submit maps and boundary descriptions for each unit by the acreage reporting date. Reason A is not correct. Irrigation practice statements are irrelevant to optional unit establishment. Reason B is not correct. Production history reports are not required for unit designation. Acreage reports suffice. Reason D is not correct. Changing share percentages is not part of optional unit documentation. Question 41. A policyholder has 100 acres of wheat and 200 acres of barley in County Y, all under one ownership and eligible for MPCI. He wants to elect a whole farm unit instead of separate enterprise units. Under FCIC rules, is he eligible for a whole farm unit? A. Yes, but only if all crops share the same price election. B. No, whole farm units are not available for small grain crops. C. No, a whole farm unit requires at least 3 different insured commodities. D. Yes, whole farm units combine all insurable crops in the county under one ownership. The correct answer is D. A whole farm unit allows combining all insurable crops in the county under common ownership into a single unit, regardless of crop type. Reason A is not correct. Price elections can vary by crop. They do not prevent a whole farm unit election. Reason B is not correct. Whole farm units are available for any eligible insurable crops, including small grains. Reason C is not correct. There is no requirement for a minimum number of insured commodities beyond having multiple crops. Question 42. Under the MPCI policy, an insured must provide notice of probable loss within how many hours of discovering the loss? A. 24 hours. B. 72 hours. C. 15 days. D. 90 days. The correct answer is B. The policy requires the insured to notify the insurer of probable loss within 72 hours of discovery to allow timely loss adjustment and mitigation of further damage. Reason A is not correct. 24 hours underestimates the allowable notification window specified in the policy. Reason C is not correct. 15 days exceeds the maximum notification period required for probable loss notice. Reason D is not correct. 90 days is far longer than the policy's mandated notification requirement. Question 43. According to MPCI joint inspection rules, how much advance notice must an adjuster provide to the insured before conducting a joint loss inspection? A. 48 hours. B. 24 hours. C. 72 hours. D. 1 week. The correct answer is A. MPCI guidelines require the adjuster to notify the insured at least 48 hours before a joint inspection to allow full participation in the loss adjustment process. Reason B is not correct. 24 hours does not meet the minimum lead time specified for joint inspections. Reason C is not correct. 72 hours exceeds the policy's required notice period. Reason D is not correct. 1 week is significantly longer than the notice requirement in the policy. Question 44. An adjuster uses NCIS grain bin. Measurement procedures to determine capacity. After measuring the bin's inside circumference at mid-height as 62.8 feet and the grain depth as 24 feet, what is the approximate capacity in bushels? Use pi equals 3.1416, and 1 bushel equals 1.244 cubic feet. A. 6,060 bushels. B. 3,029 bushels. C. 12,120 bushels. D. 1,218 bushels. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is found by computing radius from circumference, r equals c divided by 2 pi equals 10 feet. Calculating volume, pi multiplied by r2 multiplied by height equals 3.1416. Multiplied by 100 multiplied by 24 equals 7,539.84 cubic feet. And converting to bushels, 7,539.84 divided by 1.244, approximately 6,060 bushels. Reason B is not correct. This underestimates capacity by roughly half, indicating a missing step in unit conversion. Reason C is not correct. This overestimates by about double, likely from omitting the conversion factor for bushels. Reason D is not correct. This low value suggests only radius calculation without accounting for full bin depth and volume conversion. Question 45. An adjuster is appraising a loss of fresh tomatoes that have suffered sun-scald damage. According to the Fresh Produce Appraisal Handbook, which section provides the guidelines for calculating quality deductions for sun-scald on tomatoes? A. General appraisal procedures. B. Sampling and inspection methods. C. Fresh fruit quality factors. D. Fresh vegetable quality factors. The correct answer is D. This option is correct because the Fresh Produce Appraisal Handbook classifies tomatoes under the Fresh Vegetable Quality Factors section, which includes sun-scald deduction guidelines. Reason A is not correct. This section covers broad procedures and does not include specific quality deduction guidelines. Reason B is not correct. Sampling methods are explained here, but it does not provide quality adjustment factors. Reason C is not correct. Although tomatoes are botanically fruits, the handbook places their quality factors under vegetables. Question 46. According to YO, Stat. Section 26, 8, 2 out of 2A. What is the application fee for a crop insurance adjuster license? A. $60. B. $40. C. $75. D. $100. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is $60 as specified in the statute, setting the fee for a crop insurance adjuster license application. Reason B is not correct. This amount is below the statutory fee and does not match the amount set by law. Reason C is not correct. This figure exceeds the fee established in the governing statute. Reason D is not correct. This amount is not authorized by the statute for this license type. Question 47. Under Wyoming Department of Insurance regulations, when must fingerprint impressions be submitted for a background check as part of a crop adjuster license application? A. No later than 30 days after the application date. B. Within 60 days after the application date. C. Only upon biennial renewal every 2 years. D. Before scheduling the licensing examination. The correct answer is A. Fingerprint impressions must be submitted within 30 days of the application date to complete the background check requirement. Reason B is not correct. Extending the window to 60 days exceeds the regulatory limit. Reason C is not correct. Background check fingerprints are required initially, not only at renewal. Reason D is not correct. Submission timing is defined by regulation, not tied to exam scheduling. Question 48. Which applicant qualifies for a waiver of the 24-hour pre-licensing education requirement for a crop insurance adjuster license in Wyoming? A. Holds a non-resident adjuster license in another state that has been in effect during the 12 months preceding application. B. Has at least 2 years of underwriting experience with an authorized insurer. C. Completed a bachelor's degree in insurance within the past 5 years. D. Completed a 24-month apprenticeship under a licensed crop adjuster. The correct answer is A. An active adjuster license in another state maintained during the 12 months before application satisfies the waiver criteria. Reason B is not correct. Underwriting experience does not substitute for the statutory education requirement. Reason C is not correct. A degree in insurance is not an approved basis for waiving pre-licensing hours. Reason D is not correct. An apprenticeship is not recognized as a waiver for the education requirement. Question 49. When does a Wyoming crop insurance adjuster license expire for renewal purposes? A. On the last day of the licensee's birth month in odd-numbered years. B. On the last day of the licensee's birth month in even-numbered years. C. On the anniversary date 2 years after initial issuance. D. On December 31st of each odd-numbered year. The correct answer is A. Licenses expire on the last day of the licensee's birth month in odd-numbered years, requiring renewal every 2 years. Reason B is not correct. Renewal is set for odd-numbered years, not even. Reason C is not correct. The expiration is tied to birth month, not the issuance anniversary. Reason D is not correct. Expiry is based on the birth month, not year-end date. Question 50. Jordan is renewing a Wyoming crop insurance adjuster license and has completed 8 general CE hours, 2 ethics hours, and 4 crop insurance CE hours toward the 24-hour requirement. What is the maximum number of general CE hours Jordan can still take to satisfy the state requirement? A. 10. B. 8. C. 9. D. 7. The correct answer is D. The adjuster has completed 14 hours. The remaining 10 hours must include at least 1 ethics and 2 crop insurance hours, leaving up to 7 general hours. Reason A is not correct. It assumes all remaining 10 hours can be general, disregarding the mandatory ethics and crop insurance hours. Reason B is not correct. It overestimates general hours by allocating 8, which neglects 1 required ethics or crop insurance minimum. Reason C is not correct. It assigns 9 general hours, ignoring both the ethics and crop insurance minimum requirements. Question 51. According to Wyoming Statute 16.3.107, a person served with a subpoena by the insurance commissioner must file any petition to modify or cancel the subpoena within how many days after service? A. 10 days. B. 5 days. C. 20 days. D. 30 days. The correct answer is A. The statute allows 10 days after service within which a petition to modify or cancel a subpoena must be filed, ensuring timely review of the compulsory process. Reason B is not correct. That time frame is too short. The statute specifies a longer period. Reason C is not correct. That is longer than the period provided in the statute. Reason D is not correct. That exceeds the statutory deadline for filing a petition. Question 52. Under Wyoming Insurance Code Section 26.13.204, the commissioner is required to conduct a market conduct examination of each authorized insurer at least once in which interval? A. Once every 3 years. B. Once every 7 years. C. Once every 5 years. D. Once every 10 years. The correct answer is C. The code mandates that each insurer be examined for market conduct at least once every 5 years to ensure ongoing compliance with state regulations. Reason A is not correct. That interval is shorter than the minimum period set by the statute. Reason B is not correct. That exceeds the examination interval required under state law. Reason D is not correct. That is longer than the maximum interval permitted by the code. Question 53. Per Wyoming statute 26-13-131, a cease and desist order issued by the commissioner may impose a civil penalty not to exceed what amount for each violation? A. $5,000. B. $1,000. C. $10,000. D. $20,000. The correct answer is B. The statute allows a maximum civil penalty of $1,000 for each violation of a cease and desist order issued by the commissioner. Reason A is not correct. That figure exceeds the maximum amount authorized under the statute. Reason C is not correct. That amount is higher than the statutory cap for each violation. Reason D is not correct. That far surpasses the penalty limit set by law. Question 54. Under Wyoming Statute 16-3111b, an aggrieved party must file a petition for rehearing within how many days after the mailing of a commissioner's contested case decision? A. 10 days. B. 14 days. C. 20 days. D. 30 days. The correct answer is C. The statute requires that petitions for rehearing in contested cases be filed within 20 days after the decision is mailed by the commissioner. Reason A is not correct. That is shorter than the period prescribed by the statute. Reason B is not correct. That does not match the time limit set in the statute. Reason D is not correct. That exceeds the filing deadline established by law. Question 55. According to Wyoming statutes, what action must the commissioner take next after issuing the emergency suspension order? A. Schedule an administrative hearing within 10 days of the order's effective date and provide at least 3 days' notice. B. Schedule an administrative hearing within 30 days of the order's effective date and provide at least 5 days' notice. C. Schedule an administrative hearing within 60 days of the order's effective date and provide at least 10 days' notice. D. Schedule an administrative hearing within 45 days of the order's effective date and provide at least 7 days' notice. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is to schedule the hearing within 30 days of the effective date and provide 5 days' notice per Wyoming emergency suspension procedures under WS 26-13-112. Reason A is not correct. Requiring a hearing within 10 days with 3 days' notice is too short and does not comply with the statutory 30-day timeline. Reason C is not correct. Allowing 60 days for the hearing and requiring 10 days' notice exceeds the maximum period allowed by statute. Reason D is not correct. Scheduling the hearing at 45 days with 7 days' notice is inconsistent with the 30-day hearing requirement. Question 56. According to Wyoming Statute Section 26-13-124, which of the following practices is defined as an unfair claim practice? A. Failing to use standard industry claim forms when available. B. Soliciting a claim by offering an unlawful inducement. C. Charging an insured a premium rate not filed with the commissioner. D. Misrepresenting to a claimant any material fact or policy provision. The correct answer is D. The statute prohibits knowingly misrepresenting any material fact or policy provision to claimants. This specific misrepresentation is explicitly listed as an unfair claim practice. Reason A is not correct. Not using standard forms may violate procedural guidelines but is not enumerated as an unfair claim practice under Section 26-13-114. Reason B is not correct. Offering inducements relates to solicitation ethics rather than defined unfair claim practices for claim handling. Reason C is not correct. Charging unfiled premiums concerns rate regulation, not the unfair claim practices section. Question 57. Under Wyoming crop insurance regulations, within how many days must an insurer acknowledge receipt of a notice of loss? A. 10 days. B. 20 days. C. 15 days. D. 30 days. The correct answer is C. Regulations require that insurers acknowledge receipt of a notice of loss within 15 days to ensure timely communication with claimants. Reason A is not correct. A 10-day period is shorter than the prescribed time frame and is not supported by regulation. Reason B is not correct. A 20-day acknowledgement period exceeds the regulatory requirement. Reason D is not correct. A 30-day period is too long and does not comply with the prompt notice rule. Question 58. Once a notice of loss is acknowledged, under Wyoming law, an insurer must commence investigation and notify the claimant of its coverage determination within how many days? A. 45 days. B. 30 days. C. 60 days. D. 90 days. The correct answer is B. Wyoming requires that, after acknowledgement, insurers begin investigation and inform the claimant of coverage within 30 days to ensure prompt claim handling. Reason A is not correct. A 45-day period exceeds the prompt investigation mandate. Reason C is not correct. Allowing 60 days would delay required notification beyond regulatory standards. Reason D is not correct. A 90-day interval is far longer than the statute permits for coverage determination. Question 59. Under Wyoming unfair claim provisions, a fair settlement offer must be based on which of the following criteria? A. Historical average yields exclusively regardless of current conditions. B. The insured's subjective estimate of loss without independent verification. C. Policy provisions, current loss data, and comparable market values. D. Underwriter's personal judgment without supporting documentation. The correct answer is C. Fair settlement offers must rely on the actual policy terms, objective loss measurements, and market comparables to ensure equity and compliance. Reason A is not correct. Using only historical averages ignores present data and market factors. Reason B is not correct. Relying solely on the insured's estimate lacks the objective support required by law. Reason D is not correct. Personal judgment without documentation fails to meet the mandated objective basis for settlements. Question 60. A crop insurance agent meets with a producer to review coverage for the upcoming season. During the discussion, the agent states that prevented planting coverage will automatically apply to all planted acreage, even though producers must elect that coverage separately on the application. Under Wyoming's prohibition on misrepresentation of policy facts, which action by the agent is most clearly a violation? A. Accurately describing the deductible provisions under the Revenue Protection Plan. B. Failing to explain the 30-day written notice requirement for policy cancellation. C. Providing last year's rate table without clarifying current year rate changes. D. Stating that prevented planting coverage will automatically apply to all planted acreage without a separate election. The correct answer is D. The correct answer misrepresents that prevented planting coverage automatically applies without separate election, as required by the policy. Wyoming law prohibits any misrepresentation of policy facts, including false statements about coverage terms. The other actions involve omissions or accurate disclosures rather than affirmative misrepresentations. Reason A is not correct. Describing deductible provisions accurately does not constitute a misrepresentation of policy facts. Reason B is not correct. Failing to explain a policy requirement is an omission, not an affirmative misrepresentation of coverage terms. Reason C is not correct. Providing outdated rate information without clarifying changes may mislead but is not an explicit false statement about policy facts. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.